All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Final Word with MattyB here on the It's a Wrap Sports Network on this beautiful Thursday evening, October the 10th. And we've had now about 24 hours to process, 24 hours to grieve, 24 hours to search for answers about what happened yesterday up at Queens. And what I am hearing from a lot of different people is that it centers on three different areas: offense, bullpen, and Rob Thompson. That's right. Rob Thompson is getting some blame, but I agree with the Rob Thompson assessment, but not necessarily for his decisions within the playoffs. But I'll explain as I move through the show of what I think Rob Thompson is to blame here. But no way you can hash it out doesn't make it any better. The Phillies have still been eliminated from the playoffs, and they still had a major letdown of season. And there's nothing that in 24 hours that people are going to tell you that's going to make you feel any different. So that is on the table tonight. Absolutely. The Eagles got a football game here in about 2 or 3 days where they're heavy favorites against the Cleveland Brown team that is in worse shape than they are. And it's kind of hard to think that, but the Cleveland Browns come into this game dinged up and just a bad football team. So the Philadelphia Eagles have an opportunity on Sunday to win and to maybe turn their season around, at least for a week. But my main question about this game as we talk about it will be, what kind of win are you looking for out there? Is this a game where you want to see a complete total domination to kind of make you feel better about the Philadelphia Eagles? Or would you be okay with which has become a typical Philadelphia Eagle victory over the last season and a quarter, kind of just ugly, but yet no style points, but we just get a win? So I'm interested to see where a lot of Eagle fans come out on that. How important is this game when it comes to style points, or is it just straight up give me a win? I don't care how you get it. The Flyers, we're about 24 hours away from the start of the Flyers season. The Flyers 24-25 season will begin in about 24 hours out there in British Columbia in Vancouver. We're going to do a mini Flyer preview and also a mini Metro Division preview. I'll talk a little bit about the Metro and also expectations that I have for the Philadelphia Flyers as they enter this season, and everything else that we can fit into the next hour here on the program. Remember that this program is being streamed across the It's a Wrap Sports Network. Good God, I'll get it right. It's a brand new network. It's a Wrap Sports Network's YouTube, as well as the Edge of Philly Sports Facebook and their X accounts. As we of course, we're all in a transitional phase right now. So make sure if you're watching on the EOP platforms to come over to the YouTube side, because I do not know how long I can stay on those platforms. So we're going to get this show kicked off with the thing we do every night to start the show, and that is your day in Philadelphia sports history. Brought to you by the It's a Wrap Sports Network and all the fine programming here on this network. We're going to go back to the year 1993, and it's an Eagles point. The Eagles were 4-0 at this stage of the 93 season. I don't know how many of you old heads out there remember the 93 season. I only remember the back end of the season for some reason. When I was reading up on this day and in this moment, I actually had no recollection. I had to go look in the archives and actually look this over. I totally forgot that this happened. But on this day in 1993, the 4-0 Eagles were battling the Chicago Bears, and Randall Cunningham broke his leg for the second time in 3 years, or actually second time in 2 years. In that game, that pretty much derailed the Eagles' season. They limped to an 8-8 finish under Rich Kotite. Those of you remember Rich Kotite, again, I know some of you younger Eagle fans don't acknowledge Eagle football before Andy Reid, but there was. But Randall Cunningham broke his leg on this day in 1993, the second time within 2 years that happened to him in a game. Of course, in 91, to start the season, he broke his leg in Green Bay. But this happened in 93, ending a very promising Eagles season. 4-0, and they ended up 8-8 which set up the 94 disaster of a season where the Eagles started the year out 7-2 and then finished up 7-9. So that was your moment, a kind of somber moment, I guess, in Philadelphia sports history, was the day Randall Cunningham broke his leg for the second time in his career, and the second time within about 2 years, ending a very promising 4-0 start to the 93 Eagles season. And that was your day in Philadelphia sports history, brought to you, as I mentioned, by the It's a Wrap Sports Network and all the great programs contained here on the show, on the channel. And so let's go right into the Phillies here. And we're going to dissect a few things with the Phillies. I'm going to attempt to, 24 hours later, rationalize, maybe that's not the right word. I'm not going to rationalize the win or the loss. We're going to talk about the causes. I'm going to provide a little bit of a blueprint to a possible solution as the Phillies now will gear up for an extremely meaningful 2025 24-25 off-season period. Because one of the also consensus things that I've heard today has been that they cannot run this back. That coming back with essentially the same lineup or the same people with maybe just a minimal amount of changes would not be correct. That's not going to do it. That's not going to win them a World Series. And I'm on board, absolutely 100% on board with that concept. But the question now is going to be whether or not the Phillies can find a way to maneuver that and figure out how they're going to spend more money on top of the money they've already spent. What's this team, about $1 billion in salary every year, and payroll, I should say, in every year? So how are they going to add more free agents to this mix? Or can they trade? And who do you trade in order to try to keep some of it together and upgrade at the same time, as well as trying to move on contracts that other teams would want to take on? So I'm going to provide a very early gut reaction blueprint to the Phillies offseason and the players I'd like to see come here with a few things in mind. We'll also discuss, as I mentioned, the root causes of this collapse. Again, I've heard that thrown around today. Is this a collapse, or is this just a team that peaked too early, or is this just a team that was never really that good, that just got hot too soon and then cooled off, obviously, too soon? So we'll try to make some sense out of that as well. And as I mentioned, we'll do some Eagles and some Flyers stuff as we get into this conversation throughout the rest of the night. Don't forget, this is also the final show of the week, our final show of our first week of broadcasting. We will be back on Sunday night talking Eagles football, talking some Flyers hockey as well. And then over the weekend, we got Clear the Ice, the Flyers post-game show that will make its debut here this season. And earlier tonight, I was on with Kyle Quinn. We did our Birds Blast show, previewing a little bit of the Eagles game and taking one final look at that disaster of a Buccaneer game as we got ready for Week 6 in the National Football League. So let's not waste any more time, and let's jump into the Philadelphia Phillies and the loss up there in New York. And I've had 24 hours to think about things. I've had 24 hours to try to rationalize it. I've had 24 hours to try to put a spin on some things, and I've really struggled with it. I've really struggled with trying to rationalize what happened, because it shouldn't have happened. I believed Rob Thompson last November and Dave Dombrowski last November when they said it was unacceptable what happened against Arizona. It was unacceptable to get to the 6th game of the NLCS at home, up 3-2, and not be able to seal the deal. I believed when questions were asked of Rob Thompson about reevaluating where potentially Kyle Schwarber batted in the lineup, or reevaluating how the Phillies approached their at-bats, and that was going to be looked at in the spring and attempted to potentially be fixed. I believed that they were going to do that. And they obviously did none of that. And then after the offseason that they had, where they brought in really nothing. They brought in Whit Merrifield and David Dahl. I mean, that was pretty much it. They re-signed Nola, they re-signed Wheeler, but they obviously came with the running back mentality. And, that was what, but I was all in for that because I thought this team was perhaps believing what Rob Thompson said about trying to assess where Kyle Schwarber batted in the lineup. And yeah, is it a nitpicky thing for me to talk about where Kyle Schwarber batted? In retrospect, the fact that Kyle Schwarber was not necessarily the player that let the Phillies down the most in the this season, maybe. But still, it's an imbalanced lineup, and Kyle Schwarber leading off is part of that imbalance. And then, of course, listening to that, they were going to readdress or look at how they approached their at-bats. None of that stuff happened. And then as the season, of course, started, and we got off to that massively hot start, the Phillies, one of the things they said, two things they said coming out of spring training was, we have a chip on our shoulder. We don't like what happened in this. We don't like how the season ended in 23. And we got to desperately get off to a hot start. And then the way they did get off that hot start, that 53-28. Now, certain people today have been bringing up certain different points of that season and saying how they got off to a hot start. I've heard people tracking it. They kind of were starting with the beginning of the season to London as like the first part of the season, that hot start, and then talking about the second half, so to speak, as after London. I've heard people say post All-Star break is when, before the All-Star break and after the All-Star break. I, of course, go with the most traditional way, and that's straight up 81 games and 81 games. And this was a point that I brought up quite routinely throughout the summer, quite routinely throughout my time on the Fightins Final and hosting my own show. I brought this up as the weeks were progressing and the days were escaping away. I kept bringing up these numbers and the alarming trend that some of these numbers were taking. And most of the trend was for the second half. And I kept getting shot down by saying that it's baseball. You know how annoyed I am of hearing that excuse, that it's baseball? What does that have anything to do with whether or not you are a competitive baseball team? What does that have anything to do with whether you win or lose? It's baseball. I understand it's baseball. I understand it's 162 games. I'm not sitting here telling you that they need to go 162-0. But some of the ways that they were playing, the ways they were losing in the second half, were extremely contradictory to how they were winning in the first half. One major stat that I will probably have put on my tombstone is the runners in scoring position batting average. And just another snapshot of that, and we're going back to the regular season. In the first half of the regular season, the Phillies were batted 277. Through the first 81 games, they batted 277 with runners in scoring position. In the second half, the next set of 81 games, they batted 255 with runners in scoring position. Is that baseball? A 22-point drop-off with your batting average and runners in scoring position over 81 games? Is that baseball? Or is that a trend of a team that doesn't understand situational hitting, that's undisciplined of the way they approach their at-bats, and is not as good as a lot of people thought they were? Again, I'm not buying that that's baseball stuff anymore. I'm not buying that, because losing in a 4-game series against the New York Mets and the way they lost it, that wasn't baseball, man. Matter of fact, what I was watching over the course of the last 5 games or 4 games, whatever it was, 4 games, loosely qualified as baseball. One of the teams was playing baseball. I don't know what the other team was doing. So I'm not buying the whole that's baseball. That's a cop-out answer to me. That's a cop-out. That's what homers say to try to make themselves feel better about a situation. The other side, of course, is the home runs given up by the pitching staff. 64 in the first 81 games and 118 in the second 81 games. Is that baseball, or is that a trend? The pitching staff is no longer pitching as effective as they were in the first half. So in an attempt to try to make themselves feel better, a lot of the fan base, poo-pooed all this stuff. As the losses were starting to stack up throughout the second half, I kept hearing this. What do you want them to do? Win at a 750 clip? I think that's what everyone was saying, because that's what they were on pace to do. Yeah. Why shouldn't I want them to win at a 750 clip? Why should I want them? Why should I not want them to duplicate what they did in the first half in the second half? Why should I not want that? And why should I not be alarmed or be alarmed when they don't? When they go from a 750 clip to a 500 clip, 250 point drop off. Is that baseball? Or is that a team that just is not that good? So we get to the playoffs happen, and when you look at what went down with this team, and you look and you boil it down, how this team lost and how this series kind of just imploded in front of them, it's those three areas that I talked about. It's offense, bullpen, and it's Rob Thompson. Offense just disappeared. I said this on the Fightins final last night, or 2 nights ago when I was on, when they lost game 3. There was a lot of surprise in a lot of people after that game. There was a lot of surprise that the team was down 2-1 to the Mets. There was no surprise. I wasn't surprised. I was frustrated. I was angry. I was mad. I wasn't surprised because I've been watching this similar product play out over the course of the last 3-4 months. So to me, it was just like any other game in the second half of the season that the Phillies had played. They got competent to above average starting pitching, and their offense completely was non-existent. It was par for the course for me at that point. And then after last night, and I've had time to think about this game, and I remember the key moment in this game where Ranger Suarez, who I've said this on my show last night, battled his butt off. Didn't pitch well. No, he didn't. And there's a problem with Ranger. There's issues with his pitching. We all know that. But he found a way. He junk balled his way through 4.5, 4 1/3, whatever it was he lasted last night. Danced around trouble twice. Gave up no runs, and you got to be excited. Struck out 8 along the way. Gave the Phillies what they needed. Gave the Phillies more than what they probably expected. And in the process, the Phillies backed him up with 1 run. And I didn't feel comfortable with 1 run. I didn't feel protected with 1 run. I felt very vulnerable with 1 run. You knew the end was coming. You knew the bottom was going to drop out. And then when Lindor hit that grand slam in the 6th, and you can blame Estevez for that. You can blame Hoffman for that. Hoffman loaded the bases. Estevez gives up the homer, whatever. It's the bullpen, which is reason number 2. I knew at that moment when that ball was leaving Citi Field, the game was over. And I know the majority of Phillies fans felt the same way, deep down in their souls, that there was no way that this team was coming back from a 4-1 deficit in the 6th inning in the playoffs. And is that baseball? Is that baseball? Or is that a team that nobody had any confidence in anymore because of what they've seen over the course of the last 3 months? So offensively is number 1, far and away the reason why this team lost this series. 3 runs a game, they averaged 12 runs in 4 games. You're not winning playoff baseball, scoring 3 runs a game in the playoffs. You're just not going to do that. What was it? What's the other number? The risk number in the playoffs? I said it the other night, 6 for 31 with a 193 batting average with runners in scoring position. They were averaging 7.5 runners left on base through that series. Again, you're not going to win. And then after the game was over, all the post-game stuff from the players. And the one thing that resonates, and you're going to sit here and you hear Castellanos say, they were all giving the right answers about giving kudos to the Mets. Saying that the right team won, not necessarily the better team, which I disagree. The Mets are better than the Phillies. The one thing that really kind of burned my gears or grinded my gears, burned my britches, whatever, was the JT Realmuto. We thought that once we got to the playoffs, we could turn the switch back on and take us through the playoffs. So by his own admittance, they turned the switch off at some point in the second half of the season. How do players who are getting paid that kind of money to play Major League Baseball, how do they get away with that? How did they get away with admitting that they weren't either dialed in or they weren't being as intense as they were in the first half? How did they get away with that? And that pissed me off. And more importantly, how does Rob Thompson allow that to happen over the course of 3 or 4 months? How does he allow that to happen to his ball club? So the offense, the bullpen, and it's complete out of left field ineffectiveness. And then Rob Thompson is my third reason why this series was lost. And not because of decisions that he made in game or in series. It was decisions that led him into this position. He did not put the Phillies in the best possible position to win this series by the admittance of one of his own players that they had stopped being intense or stopped pushing or stopped fighting at some point in the second half of the season. Again, no accountability. Who's running the team? All those things resonate with me, and that's why I blame Rob Thompson for the third factor of why the Phillies lost this series. And again, not necessarily for an in-series move that he did or did not make, but for setting the conditions for the Phillies to go into the playoffs with a mentality that all they have to do is when the playoffs start, they're just going to turn the switch back on. For allowing that mentality to fester in his team is why Rob Thompson receives the number 3 spot on my blame list about why this team lost. And we can go deeper. We can go deeper to Dave Dombrowski about not properly equipping the team, maybe last offseason or at the trade deadline. You can use either one. We can go back and forth, but those top 3 reasons, the offense, the bullpen, and Rob Thompson, are the reasons why I think the Phillies lost to the Mets in this series. And Gary says because Rob Thompson's an idiot. or that. Or because Rob Thompson is an idiot. So they're my 3 reasons. And of course, listen, that is 100% acceptable. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's not acceptable. And then, of course, going back to some of the post-game venom that I felt was Rob Thompson congratulating his players for being professional and resilient all year long. I don't know, how can you sit there and say, how can you thank your team or acknowledge your team's professionalism and resiliency when they just got embarrassed by a team that they should have beaten in 4 or 5 themselves? How do you show your resiliency and your professionalism? By averaging 3 runs a game and leaving and batting 193 with runners in scoring position. And what was their team batting average? I heard it was like 186 throughout the series. JT Realmuto was an O-burger in 4 games, 0 for 11 in 4 games. How can you? What's professional about that? And how do I get that job? Because obviously you're being graded on a real interesting curve if that's the case. So, yeah, man, 24 hours later doesn't really feel any better. But I guess we have some perspective now. We can kind of look at this thing a little bit differently. But now the big question seems to be what next, right? I think the consensus, as I said, is we can't run it back, right? We cannot feasibly, or more importantly, the Phillies, Dave Dombrowski and Rob Thompson, if he survives all this, which I don't see how he does. But the Phillies cannot run this thing back. And it's not going to be, in my opinion, it's not just the sacrificial lamb of the manager and his coaching staff that needs to change. They got to make some changes with players. And that's just the reality of it. And I know a lot of you fans out there are not going to want to hear this part, but there's some players on this team that need to be moved. But that's obviously not easier. That's easier said than done. And I'm going to try to navigate through that because I'm not going through the numbers. I'm not crunching their salary cap. As I said, my blueprint here is a very gut reaction, fantasy land type move here. But I think it's steeped in some reality. I think the Phillies could pull some of this off about what I'm about to tell you. But in reality speaking, some players are going to have to be moved. Just so that the Phillies don't get completely buried alive by the luxury tax and all that. But I'm gonna break that down. I'm gonna try to provide you with MattyB's blueprint to the World Series in 2025. And it's not as complicated, again, as as you might think, but that's because I am absolutely doing none of the other legwork involved. I'm just looking at this from the surface, and I'm saying, I want him, and let's go from there. But I'm trying to keep it in somewhat reality. I am. Juan Soto is not part of this. So that was my reality speak right there. Juan Soto is not part of this blueprint. Could he be or should he be? Absolutely, maybe. But I'm not going completely off the deep end by saying, let's just add Juan Soto. Let's assign him to a 7-year, $78,000 million contract and tack that on top of what the other $1 billion worth of payroll that we're paying and go from there. I'm not going to do that. Would I be against Juan Soto coming to Philadelphia? No, absolutely 100% not. Juan Soto playing 81 games in Citizen Bank Park would be amazing. But no, I'm not going to go with Juan Soto because that's the reality part that I'm talking about. So I'm going to provide you with that blueprint. Mitchell says, Mitchell, sorry, says, I think Bohm can go. I'm not one for running people out, but his attitude of not hitting the ball game after game is incredible, and his fielding shows as well. It's interesting that what has happened to the Alec Bohm love affair in this town. Remember the I effing hate this place, and then he owns it and he becomes a fan favorite right after that. And then he has this amazing first half where he goes to the All-Star game. Remember we talked about this way back when and around the All-Star game was, and he got the home run derby thing. Remember that? And we're all concerned, is his swing going to get screwed up by the home run derby? Now, I'm not saying that's what happened but obviously there's two different players here. There's the pre-All-Star break Alec Bohm, and then there's the post-All-Star break Alec Bohm. Now, that hand injury has something to do with it too, I'm sure. But I actually forgot about that. And I was thinking about that today. I was like, wait, remember that when we were talking about how concerned we were about sending Alec Bohm off to the All-Star break or All-Star game in the home run derby because his swing is going to get screwed up? And then he comes back and he has the god-awful second half at the plate that he had. And again, I'm not going to give the home run derby that credit. I'm going to give the hand injury. But maybe, who knows? Maybe there was something to the home run derby thing. Maybe we should stop sending players to the home run derby, especially those that are not actual home run hitters. Maybe that's what we should do in the future. But yeah, it's amazing the love affair with Alec Bohm has ended. And everybody wants to ship him out here. I'm not saying you're wrong. Absolutely not. But I agree. Alec Bohm is on my list of things to fix. I think Alec Bohm has played himself out of a starting third base job. I'm not necessarily saying move him along because I still think he could be a valuable piece off the bench as a first baseman and third baseman if we need him. So, but you're right. And again, it's steeped in reality. And he's only entering his second year of arbitration eligibility. So he's under team control for another 2 or 3 years. And they can get him on the kind of the cheap. So I think Alec Bohm should be, again, in this very initial phase of 24 hours after the season ends, trying to figure out what I want to do with the team going forward. I actually want Alec Bohm to still be part of this, but not as a starter. You know what I mean? If we can make that happen. And I'm about to reveal all that here in a second. He cost us the playoff last year in the World Series because he didn't know when to take a pitcher out or put one in. Gary, I will give you last year 100%. The Diamondback series was a lesson in Rob Thompson's managerial incompetency. 100%. I'm not prepared to give you this year. You know, are we talking about? Oh, you're talking about last year's playoffs and the World Series. Okay, you're talking about the last 2 years. All right, yeah, no, absolutely. I'll give you those two. But this year, it's harder for me to put a finger on the playoffs and say, "This is you, Rob Thompson. You made this wrong decision, and we didn't win in the playoffs." But I'm looking at the whole body of work to include last year and the year before that in the playoffs and the World Series. I'm looking at all that. Rob Thompson, I'm not sitting here telling you that Rob Thompson needs to stay here. No. I am quite the opposite. I am telling you I agree that Rob Thompson does need to go. But what my concern is that's all that they give us. That's the only sacrificial lamb we receive is the firing of the manager and his coaching staff. And that's it. And then we're going to just run it back with a different manager at the helm. That's my concern, is that's all we get. And we need more. There needs to be more done here than just firing Rob Thompson. There needs to be some player movement. There needs to be some player additions. Some players need to be sent out of here potentially. Some players need to be called up. I think it's time. The future is now for some players in the system. And I'm going to reveal that here again in a second. I don't want him to go, but he needs to just accept that they may not be on the same playing field as Johan Rojas, but he needs to just humble up. I don't want him to go, but he needs to just accept that he may be on the same playing field as Johan Rojas, but he needs to just humble up. Yeah, absolutely. And Johan Rojas is not Johan Rojas is no longer in my plans for this team, and he should not be in the plans for the Phillies in 2025. Johan Rojas needs to go back down to AAA and just kind of stay there for a while, and then either he figures out how to hit, and we give him another shot somewhere else, or we end up throwing him in as an add-on player when we trade him. Johan Rojas is I'm done with that. I'm done with that experiment. I need a competent center fielder with some upside and some potential of an upside. And Johan Rojas is not, he's kind of worn out that welcome for me. So Rojas is not even part of that, a part of my plan. But Bohm is. Bohm still is a part of that plan for me. And again, I want to preface that by saying, this is initial. So let's go into it right now. Let me reveal that right now. Well, again, there's a comment here. I truly want to hear your take on the lack of bunts this year. The holding of runners on third base is... I truly want to hear your take on the lack of bunts this year. The holding of runners on third base in critical vital moments. What do you mean, like the fact that the Phillies never sacrificed, that they never played small ball? I mean, it's well known. If you watched the Fights final, which I don't think you have because I've never seen it before, it's well documented. It was very frustrating that this team's inability to move runners along, or you call it small ball. I like to call it situational at bats. The team was actually very aggressive on the base pads when it came to stealing, and sometimes too aggressive because they would get themselves picked off all the time. But you're right. The inability for this team to see a situation with a runner on third, less than 2 outs, and not try to do what they have to do at all means to drive a runner in, either using a bunt and to include Johan Rojas in that. I mean, Rojas should have been up there bunting just about every time, using his speed to try to get on base. No, the lack of fundamental baseball in that aspect was extremely frustrating. Extremely frustrating that they never did that. And again, it's the whole live by the home run, die by the home run mentality, right? This team was, what did Rob Thompson said it himself, this team is meant to slug, and we're going to slug. And that was a one-dimensional way of looking at things. That's all he seemingly did with this team, was teach them how to drive the baseball, or attempt to try to lift the baseball. Not even drive it, lift it. Launch angle crap. Analytic BS. You're absolutely 100% right. This team lacks fundamentals. Now, fundamental bunting, sacrificing, that's not necessarily part of today's game anyway. Not to say that it can't be used still effectively. And I'm not using that as an excuse. The Phillies should have been involved in that. And there was so many opportunities, so many times this season, and it was kind of microscoped in this playoff series. They get the first 2 runners on, nobody out, and they couldn't drive a runner in. They could not move. They could not get those runners, or at least one of those runners, in. That happened so many times under the Rob Thompson tutelage, and also under Girardi, but more so under Thompson, because it was pretty much, this team was constructed that way then. No, it was very frustrating, very, very, very frustrating, and that's part of, again, firing Rob Thompson. Hopefully, bringing in a older school. I don't want to call him a hardliner manager, but somebody who played baseball in the years that I was growing up, in the 90s, a baseball player from the 1990s that has an idea of what it takes fundamentally to win baseball at the major league level, and also can incorporate analytics when necessary, and doesn't live his life in a binder. And I know there's managers out there that are still like that. I mentioned one last night, Don Mattingly. I would love Don Mattingly to have a shot here. And then Dusty Baker was brought up to me as well last night, and that intrigued me thinking as well. I think we need an older school manager to kind of right the ship a little bit. How that jives though with this new school mentality of the players, I don't know. And that's maybe drives a lot of their decisions with players in the offseason. If they do decide to hire a manager like that, then maybe they got to move certain players because they know they're not going to be able to work with an old school manager. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, no, your point is very well taken. It was extremely frustrating that they couldn't do that, or they wouldn't do it. I don't know how Rojas got in base. So I do. He's like a superior, speedy athlete. I mean, listen, in the minors, he was really good. The Phillies didn't do Rojas any favors, don't forget, or Kerkering. They called both of them up in Double-A. Rojas and Kerkering. Rojas actually went to Triple-A this year for a spell when they sent him down, but that was the only time he's ever played Triple-A ball. Rojas was called up at the Double-A level. He never went to Triple-A when he initially got called up to the majors. He's since been to Triple-A, and same thing with Kerkering. So the Phillies really didn't do Rojas any favors either. I think they misevaluated some things or misjudged some things in the center field position. But again, I go back to last offseason, when the Phillies didn't do anything external in free agency other, about addressing any of the outfield positions. And they made a decision to run back with Rojas was part of their plan. Obviously it didn't work. And obviously we saw it all last year, but the Phillies were willing to give it another chance. There's no way they can run it back this year with Rojas. They never bunt or push runners to second, and when they have the ability to send them home on the fly ball third, but yeah, no, absolutely, at 100%, I agree with you. You're correct. Dusty Rothman's decision making at third base has come into play the last 3 or 4 seasons. It wasn't so bad this year. He was okay, but the players just stopped listening to Dusty Rothman too. Don't forget, not so much on sac flies, but trying to stretch a double or go from second to home. How many times have we seen Bryce Harper blow through a stop sign? How many times have we seen players just disregard what Dusty Rothman's doing out there at third base? So maybe it's something rests on the players too. I'm not saying Dusty Rothman was the most aggressive guy on third base. He's not. And again, I'm advocating a complete coaching staff change. But some of the blame needs to be given to the players as well. Because Rob let them do what they wanted to do. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I agree with you. And again, that's one of the reasons why I don't think that Rob Thompson needs to go. So let's take a look at this real quick, because I want to get into this. I want to give you my blueprint for what the Phillies should do in 2025. So here are the positions that I'm keying in on. I'm keying in on 3 positions. We got to look at center field, we got to look at left field, and we got to look at third base. Those are the positions that right now, and then I'll talk a little bit about the starting rotation and the bullpen too. But those are the positions that the Phillies need to address mainly, I think, in the free agent market. So when you look at third base, I look at 2 potential free agents that are pending at the end of the year. You got Urshela from the Urshela's with the where is he with? Urshela's with the Yankees. I'm sorry, Urshela's with the Braves. He was with the Tigers, and he got moved to the Braves. He'll be a free agent at the end of the year. Now, what Urshela will do for you, he comes at a little bit of a manageable price tag. $740,000 AAV last year. He's 32 years old, so he's a little old. But I'm asking Urshela, and I'm asking the third baseman who I'm going to bring here, to just hold down the fort for about 2 years. That's all I need him for. I need Urshela in 25 and 26. After that, it's Aiden Miller time, right? I'm going to go ahead and move Aiden Miller into third base at that point. I just need 2 years of stability at third base. And Giovanni Urshela is my number 1 candidate. He comes at a very reasonable price tag. His batting average is a little bit of he had kind of a down year this year. Split time, as I mentioned, between the Tigers and the Braves. Batted .243 for Detroit, and he batted .265 for Atlanta in only 36 games that he played with the Braves after being moved there. He only struck out, though. He only struck out 66 times all season long, and what, 100 and, I don't know, what's 120 odd games. So he doesn't strike out that often. He's got a little power. Bohm doesn't have any power. He hit 9 home runs between the 2 teams. He drove in about 54 runs between the 2 teams. He had 20 doubles between Detroit and Atlanta. And I think he only committed like 7 errors all season long. So I'm okay with a cheaper option here of Gio Urshela Urshela to come here to be my new third baseman again, just for 2 years. It's all I need, a third baseman stopgap until, as I said, it's Aiden Miller time. The other third baseman candidate is a little bit of a reach. It's Alex Bergman from the Astros. He comes with a little bit more of a heftier price tag. Last year, he made $20 million AAV. I don't know if that's, again, that fantasy here. I don't know if the Phillies can work that out, and I don't know if he'd accept a 2-year contract. But he's also 31 years old, or he'll be 31 when the season starts next season. But Bergman actually would be, Bergman would be the man. I mean, maybe you do sign him long term. Maybe give him a 5-year deal, because he would definitely, he'd be a massive upgrade over Alec Boehm on third base. This year with the Tigers, he batted .260, drove in 75 runs, 26 homers, 30 doubles. Just a pure athlete out there on third base, a massive upgrade over Boehm. So I guess with reality tipping towards Urshela more. Again, I'm looking for a 2-year stopgap. Bregman's just kind of maybe looking a little bit, maybe I'm being a little too greedy there, but there's my third base upgrade. My next upgrade is in left field, and I'm looking back to the Bronx for this one. I like Alex Verdugo here. I think Alex Verdugo would be a great fit in left field for the Phillies. He carries, what's he carry? Let me bring this up. He carries an AAV. I got to bring it up. I had it up, but let me see what was AAV. His AAV was about $8.7 million. I think the Phillies can manage that. But I need him for a couple. He's 28. He'll be 20, going on 29 when the season starts. I'm okay with signing Verdugo to a 5-year deal to play left field. I wouldn't have to worry about left field anymore. No more platooning. You know what I'm saying? It would be, a solid, competent fielder, solid, competent bat in left field this year for the Yankees in the regular season. He did bat. He only batted .233. It was a down year for him. It was a real down year. .264 the year before that, .280, .289, .308. So he had a down year this year. But I'm willing to take a chance on Alex Verdugo as a massive upgrade over the platoon situation of Austin Hayes and friggin' Brandon Marsh. This is just based strictly in fantasy. But there's my upgrade in left field. And I got my upgrade at third base. So my upgrade at center field's coming internal. I'm giving it to Justin Crawford. Crawford's going to be my center fielder this year. The Phillies prospect, the phenom, first-round draft pick a couple years ago. I'm going to get the future's now. I need a competent guy out there in the outfield. A lot of you might be thinking, what's the difference between Crawford and Rojas? Absolutely correct. I don't know, but the upside and the potential on Crawford is off the charts. I think it's time. Crawford is my new center fielder. So now I have my new lineup, and this is my new lineup for 2025 with my new players incorporated. I want Trey Turner leading off. I am so friggin' done with this Kyle Schwarber leadoff conversation. He is not a leadoff hitter. It's over. He's out of that spot. Trey Turner is going to lead off, and he's either going to succeed as a leadoff hitter or he's going to die there. But he is my leadoff hitter. I'm going to have either Urshela or Bregman batting second and playing third base, Harper at first batting third, Schwarber DHing in batting fourth, JT catching batting fifth, Castellanos sixth in right field, Verdugo batting seventh and left, Stott batting eighth. That's right, not fifth, but eighth at second base, and Crawford batting ninth, at least this year, in center field. My rotation, Wheeler, Nola, Suarez, Sanchez, and either Andrew Painter, depending on where he is in his rehab, and if he has a setback or not while pitching in the Arizona Fall League, or James Paxton from the Red Sox. I'm bringing him in for about a 2-year deal and to be my fifth starter. That's my rotation. My bullpen's a little bit more unstable right now. I got Banks and Ruiz as my long relievers. I also got Kirkering in that role as a long reliever. Strom is my 6th inning guy. Alvarado is my 7th inning guy. And my 8th inning guy, because I'm going to have defined roles in our bullpen next year if I was the manager. We're having defined roles. No more of this crap of closer by committee. Not doing that no more. I don't want to hear those words anymore. But Ryan Presley from the Astros is going to be my 8th inning setup guy. And Kenley Jansen from the Red Sox is my new closer heading forward into 2025. So there you have, and then my bench. That's right, I got to talk to you about my bench because this is where it comes into play. My bench is either Stubbs. I would like to get rid of him too. Either Stubbs, Marchant, or James McCann, who I'd sign as a free agent. Sosa, Hayes, Bohm, and Marsh are my bench. And I already told you my starting rotation, and there's my bullpen. So there you have it. That is my blueprint on how we actually fix the lineup. I don't know how the Phillies work the money on here. I don't know how you do that without busting the cap or violating the luxury cap to a certain point where you would, you lose you slide down 10 spots and you forfeit 10 spots in the draft, and you also forfeit money. But that is it. Gio Urshela, Bregman, Verdugo, Kenley Jansen, Ryan Presley, and I'm keeping Bohm, but I'm putting him on the bench. I'm keeping Marsh, I'm keeping Hayes, but I'm putting him on the bench. And that's what I'm doing going forward. Now, it's all about the young players too. Crawford, as I said, give him a shot at center field next year. I'm done with the instability in the outfield. I don't want no platoon situation. I don't want a guy who can't bat when the sun's out. I want a steady outfield, and I think that gives me the best opportunity for a steady outfield. I got some younger players that are in the system that are working their way up. The catcher situation is a little bit more sticky because JT's a free agent at the end of the year of 25. So we may have to play around with something there for a year or two until Tate's ready. But that's it, man. That is my lineup. That is who I want. I want either Urshela or Bregman. I want Verdugo. I want Presley. I want Jansen. And I want Paxton if Painter cannot start the season as my fifth starter. So there you have it. MattyB's Phillies 2025 lineup. What do you think? Am I reaching for the stars on this? I think I am. I don't know if they can do all that. I don't think they can really do all that. But that would be great, man. That would be great. I appreciate your take on things. It's good to hear another side of things. Well, I thank you. Thank you for joining. And don't forget, if you really like my takes on things, follow that little scrolly thing there to the It's a Wrap YouTube channel and like and subscribe on this channel. Left, center, and third. Absolutely, Fred. We went over those players. And Gary says, I agree. We don't need another player that is having a downfall. Yankees fans despise him. I don't care if the Yankees fans despise him. I want stability. He's having a bad year, Verdugo. I'll give you that. But he's had really good years up to this season. And if you look at the free agent market with left fielders, there's a few of them out there. But again, I take in consideration Citizen Bank Park too. All right. If you've ever been to Yankee Stadium, it's not as cathedral-like as the old Yankee Stadium, but it is still kind of cathedral-like. The fences are a little bit pushed in here. I still like that. Give me Verdugo. I'm going with Verdugo. All right. That's who I want. Verdugo was always good. Yeah, and I think and again, I'm only asking 2 years for most of these guys because we got Racones Jr. in the system that's coming up. We got some really good young prospects bubbling on the surface. Need a couple more years down there, and then we can maybe start kind of filling them in. But it's an upgrade. Verdugo is an upgrade, a massive upgrade over Marsh and friggin' Hayes. And if we can move Marsh at some point in the offseason, so be it. We can move Hayes in the offseason because we're probably going to have to get some sort of salary cap relief at some point in order to make any move, whatever moves they make. Some players are going to have to get moved. I'm not prepared to move off of Stott. I think Stott is a well above average fielder. I think he's a potential Gold Glover at second or short, honestly. I just think the Phillies have screwed him up when it comes to his hitting. In no universe has Bryson Stott a fifth man in the lineup. No universe does Bryson Stott belong batting fifth. And the Phillies screwed that up. And I think that messed with him a little bit. All that talk about the Chase Utley comparison, we can stop that for a while, maybe forever. And he's not Chase Utley. He's never going to be Chase Utley. But he's a serviceable major league second baseman. And he's a hell of a fielder. So I'm not prepared to give up on Stott. He has a place in the infield, but I need him lower in my lineup, and he can't be batting fifth. So batting eighth is, I think, the home of Rice and Stott, honestly. Crawford definitely needs to be brought in. Didn't he bat over 300 in the minors? Well, he split time between high A and double A this year. He batted like 253 in like 30 or 40 games with the Fightin' Phils at the end of the season. Prior to that, he was batting over 300 in Lakewood, or sorry, Jersey Shore. So again, it's a little bit of a reach with Crawford this year. It's a little bit of a reach, and I don't know if the Phillies want to go that direction. But I think in any scenario, when you look at Crawford in center field, I don't know if the Phillies are going to be able to spend on center field. And with a center fielder in the wings anyway, maybe they just say it's time now. I do fear the Dominic Brown effect. I don't want to ruin him. I fear the Scott Kinnery effect. I fear all that when it comes to rushing players up to the system, up through the system. But I don't know. I got a feeling about Crawford. I've been following him a lot. He's going to be a star at this level. The question is when. And right now, the Phillies need him. We need him. So, yeah, I mean, give me some Crawford. Give me some Crawford, man. Whatever happened to the pitcher Phillips? Who cares? Tyler Phillips, who cares? He's in the minors. He's never coming back. And of course, you got Mick Abel too. Mick Abel's in this mix a little bit. I think Mick Abel should get a look at in the spring too. But there you go. What about trying to bring in Miller from Oakland? Need to do something to get it closer. Mason Miller, right? We talked about this last night or 2 nights ago. Me and you. The Phillies didn't do it the All-Star break or the trade deadline. Don't forget, Vegas is in a situation. Vegas, San Francisco, Sacramento, Reno, Oakland, whoever the hell they are. They're in a situation where they're trying to rebuild. The asking price on Mason Miller is probably going to be way too high for my blood right now. I don't want to give up 7 prospects for Mason Miller. I really don't. I mean, he had an amazing run through Citizen Bank Park last year. I get that, but isn't he a DH? I don't need a guy like that right now. Isn't he worse in the outfield than than Brandon Marsh? Wasn't that the knock on him? I need someone to play the outfield. I don't need another DH. And I think the asking price on Mason Miller is going to be way too high. Let's get started on managing. Let's do it, Gary. Let's start making some phone calls. Well, we got to wait for the Yankees to be finished first. We can't make any moves until the Yankees are out of the playoffs. And tonight they're playing. Anybody know? Give me an update. I know that it's 2-1 Yankees in the series right now. But yeah, let's do it, man. So Bregman, or is it? You want Bregman or Urshela at third? Bregman comes with a $20 million AAV. Urshela comes with a $740 AAV. I mean, again, I only need a third baseman for 2 years. Then Aiden Miller should be ready. So I'm siding on the Urshela side when it comes to third base, just because of what Aiden Miller represents in the future. I would love to have Bregman here, though. That'd be amazing. What about Rooker? Brent Rooker? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Again, yeah, I'll do it. Stott is an excellent fielder and should be good to go. Yeah, I think so. The problem is, I think the Phillies messed him up. I think the K-Long and Rob Thompson messed him up, trying to make him a type of hitter that he'll never be. Stott is your prototypical eighth hitter. And I'm talking like in 1980, he's the prototypical eighth type of hitter. He's got no power, but he provides something. But you don't put him in any kind of positions to where he's coming up with runners on first and third with 2 outs in the 8th inning or in the 5th inning. He's not a high leverage kind of offensive weapon. He's not. Give him the 8th spot in the lineup where he has no pressure down there and let him do his thing. Let him try to figure himself out. I think we screwed him up a little bit. And when I say we, of course, I mean the Phillies by putting him in those positions. Stott needs about 8th or 9th. Yep, I agree. I don't think 2. No, 8 or 9. 8 or 9. I think Stott will come back stronger at the plate. Again, I'm going to bat him 8th so he can figure himself out, and hopefully he does. Juan Soto won a World Series at the age of 20. Yeah, listen, and I know, Mike, and as I told you, there's some pipe dreams about my fantasy Phillies lineup. Juan Soto would be obviously the top of my list. And I already have an alternate lineup set up with a Juan Soto part of that mix, but I don't think the Phillies will ever be able to afford Juan Soto. And I don't think they'll do it. We can't take on another one like that. Would it be amazing? Would Soto lead off in my fantasy lineup? Yes, he would lead off. And I'd have Turner batting second. Yes, Soto would be my new leadoff guy. He's my new center fielder. He would be all those things. But again, Crawford, whether or not Crawford's coming this year or next year, he's coming. And, Soto can play center. He can play left. I could move Soto back to left. But, again, the reality, I'm trying to do some reality. Yes, we did. The Yankees won. Okay, so the Yankees won, and so they're moving on, right? So, isn't that it? They just eliminated the Royals. So the Yankees are moving on the ALCS. Rooker was a DH for them. Yeah. Rooker was DH for them to look at younger outfielders. Yeah. I would do it. Sure. It was Aiden Miller at third base. So he's a third baseman. And by trade, he's a third baseman. But the Phillies were working him out at shortstop this past summer because of the log jam situation, right? They were trying to make him versatile within the infield, both shortstop and third. But I think they can scrap that experiment right now because he's my long-term third baseman. Alec Bohm, you're out, man. I'm sorry. I'm done with Alec Bohm. I'm done. I'm done. We can trade him. Alec Bohm is done. And am I here? You guys got me? Put Aiden Miller back at third. The Yankees won. All right. Well, the Yankees won, so I guess they've knocked out the Royals. All right. So there you have it. There you have it. My fantasy blueprint fix for the Phillies in 2025. My new lineup, and I think that's would be okay. Now, again, some of the things that I'm concerned about moving forward is that the Phillies management decide that the pound of flesh that Phillies fans deserve is just the manager and his coaching staff, and then we're just going to run everything back with a new, with different clowns, right? We need more than that, and I think we need to demand more than that. So significant change needs to be made. As I said, Paxton and Painter would be my number 5s in my rotation. I'm bringing Presley and Jansen in from free agency to be the back end of my bullpen. And, of course, the number one thing I'm doing with my bullpen is I'm assigning roles. I already told you who my long relievers would be. I told you who my 6th inning and 7th inning guys would be and my 8th and 9th inning. That is how it's going to be. No more of this by committee crap. We're going to have assigned roles for our pitchers in the bullpen so they can get comfortable in certain situations that they're going to be called upon to pitch in, because that is not healthy. A relief pitcher coming in, not knowing day to day, game to game, what he's going to be asked to do is not healthy. Baseball players are creatures of habit. Why are we being hypocritical by assigning this bullpen by committee crap? We need to define the roles of our bullpen. And I've done that in 2025. Let me recap that for you real quick. And we got to move on to a different topic because running late. Again, Kerkering, Ruiz, and Banks are my long relievers. Strom is my 6th inning guy. Alvarado my 7th. Presley's my 8th. And Jansen is my closer going forward into 2025. So there you have it. MattyB's fix for the Philadelphia Phillies moving forward. And the conversation, of course, will not die when it comes to the Phillies. We'll be talking about this throughout the next few months as we get into the offseason and we get into the actual what the Phillies will do. Ruben Amaro went on a podcast today and said that he knows personally that John Middleton is very upset and that John Middleton will not, I repeat, will not run it back. That changes will be made. So we'll see what extensive changes he's referring to as we get this thing played out. So, and I heard him say it. I heard the podcast. So there you have it. There's my Phillies talk. And again, that was brought to you by the good folks over here at the It's a Wrap Sports Network, the fine sponsors of this program, the Birds Blast, the Fighting's Final, and the Clear the Ice program. And if you want more of it, and if you need more of it, you need to go to this YouTube address, and you need to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can be notified when we're on the air. I am broadcasting out over the EOP social media platforms, but that is a temporary thing. I don't know when they're going to stop that, and then you're not going to be able to find me unless you go to YouTube. So please head over to YouTube now. Let's kind of transition. Earlier tonight, we talked a little bit about the Birds. Me and Kyle Quinn doing our pregame show called the Birds Blast. Eagles 9.5-point favorites going into this game on Sunday. What is the temperature in the room here when it comes to this game? The Browns 1-4. Deshaun Watson's a disaster. The Browns are banged up left and right. They don't deserve to be on the same football field as just about every other team in the NFL. By all intents and purposes, this is an Eagle win. But you got the Eagles who are struggling with trying to find their own identity through 4 games of the season. A quarterback who's being paid $bazillion dollars not playing that way. A problem with the coordinators and their schemes. A problem potentially with the coach and the locker room. So the Eagles come into this game holding a lot of their own baggage. But on paper and in Vegas, the odds makers got the Eagles as 9.5-point favorites heading into this game. What kind of win, and I'm going to say it, what kind of win are Eagle fans willing to accept? Now, we all know that a loss would send this thing into all kinds of a panic mode, right? The season would be completely lost if the Eagles somehow find a way to lose against the Cleveland Browns. But are you satisfied with a dinky-dunk, sloppy, gritty, dirty win, the type of win we've been seeing from this team over the last going on calendar year? Or do you need, for your own self-gratification or your own confidence levels, do you need an Eagle-dominant victory? Do you need a drubbing? You need the Eagles to go out there and wipe up the floor with the Cleveland Browns. What kind of win are you willing to accept to get you off the ledge, so to speak, as an Eagle fan with this team? I actually am picking the Browns to win this game, 100%. Because I have no faith or confidence in the Philadelphia Eagles to beat the Cleveland Browns. Because I am completely out on what the Eagles are doing. I don't think they're a good team. Now, do I believe the Eagles are going to lose? No. I think the Eagles will win. But I wouldn't be surprised if they did lose. So I need to know what your confidence level is and what type of win would you accept. And if they did lose, if God forbid they lost to the lousy Cleveland-ass Browns, what is the appropriate reaction? Does Nick Sirianni get driven out of town on Sunday night? Does Howie Roseman follow him on Monday morning? Do we start benching people? Do we fire coordinators yet again? What is the appropriate reaction if this team were to lose against the Cleveland Browns? This is as much of a win as any that the Eagles have had in their laps in a long time. They cannot afford to lose this game under no circumstances. But does this have to be a style win for people to really get back in on board with the Eagles? Does this have to be a 38-10, a 41-17? Does this have to be one of those dominant wins? Do the Eagles need to come out in the first half and do what the Buccaneers did to the Eagles 2 weeks ago and just score on your first 3 or 4 possessions? What type of win are you looking for? And are the Eagles capable of giving you that kind of win? And what are the repercussions if they're not? And are you pissed off if they win, but they win like 17-13? All very interesting questions that I'm really interested to hear your opinions about, because I think we've hit that critical mass here with this football team at this point. It's no longer wins and losses. I was listening to a great show on the STT Sports Network last Friday. Phil Steifel. If you're out there, Phil, go ahead and check Phil's show out. That's the STT Sports Network. Phil had a beat writer, a Jets beat writer who's an Eagle fan on, and was talking about how Eagle fans, and actually this guy was pissing me off because he was talking about how Eagles fans have an unrealistic expectation about how this team should go about and win. He said it's completely acceptable for the Eagles to be winning games the way they've been winning them recently, that you can't go out and dominate teams every week. And I don't remember any Eagle fan that I've ever spoken to, and I've never said this, that I need to have dominant wins every week. I don't remember those words that were coming out of my mouth or hearing those words come out of other people's mouths. But the way the Eagles have been winning over the last, again, calendar year, that's what we're up to now. It's been downright, it's not confident building at all. They've been getting lucky. They haven't handled their business against lesser opponents in a very long time. It hasn't been wins that you can say, wow, you know what, man? Yes. No, they've been dinky dunk, freaky wins. The ball bounced one way. The ref called a penalty here, didn't call a penalty there. And then when they lose, they're losing the same way. So this guy went off about how unrealistic it is for Eagle fans to think that they have to go out and blow out teams every week. And I don't remember saying that. But is this one of those weeks that you need one of those games in order to make you feel better about the state of this football team going forward? Because we are at a critical mass here, folks. I am out on the Philadelphia Eagles. I am one of the biggest Eagles fans you'll ever meet. But since 2019, I have not agreed with the direction of this team. I want the fraud of a GM, Howie Roseman, fired. I want Nick Sirianni fired as well. I want this team to start the hell over and build a football team properly. Not this every year we build something, then we tear it down, then we build it again the following year. I need sustained winning, because one Super Bowl in 59 years is not enough. So I want to hear from you. I won't be surprised if the Eagles go out and lose against the Browns. I won't be surprised if they go out and they beat the Browns. I picked the Eagles this season. My record, my finishing record for the Philadelphia Eagles in 2024 is 8-9. I'm on record back in August of saying that I think the Eagles are an 8-9 football team. As 500 as you can be in a 17-game season. That's what I think. I don't think they make the playoffs. Now, 2-2 into the break, or the bye, not the break, but the bye. That's where I had them. I had them at 2-2. Now, I had them getting the 2-2 a different way, but I still had them at 2-2. And then I have them losing against the Browns. So, won't be surprised if they lose, won't be surprised if they win. I'm just not surprised anymore because I'm out. But I want to come back in. And I can't get back in until certain conditions are met. And first condition is to get rid of Nick Sirianni. And the second one is to get rid of Howie Roseman. So I want to know what Eagle fans are thinking about right now as we are looming on the Eagles-Browns game. Only the second game of the season played at Lincoln Financial Field, and only home game they have in October. It's terrible. One home game in October. The Yankees won. Okay, cool. Soto was 20 playing for Washington, so why not Crawford as it? Listen, Michael, I'm not saying his age has nothing to do with it. I'm not saying that he's too young. I'm not saying that at all. Is he ready to play Major League Baseball is what I'm saying. I don't care if he's 15. If he's ready to play, let's play him. The age has nothing to do with it. It's if he's ready to play against Major League talent. And we don't know that because he's never played against Major League talent. But I'm on board. Let's bring him in. Absolutely 100%. If the Phillies were to trade him, if the Phillies were to trade Bohm, what would the Phillies get in return? Probably nothing much or nothing more than a fourth, fifth starter, maybe a bullpen arm, nothing that's going to shake the earth. Absolutely not. And that's the problem because that's where Bohm is at right now because we're not the only ones who are seeing what Bohm is doing. I mean, the rest of Major League Baseball is seeing it too. And who would want to take Bohm on, honestly, to make him a third baseman? He's built like a first baseman, and they haven't played third. I mean, to Bohm's credit, though, he's really improved his defense. Not enough for me to keep him here, but he's improved it. Have a good night. You too, Gary. Take care, man. And don't forget, like and subscribe if you're still here. I read that Nakobe Dean is dealing with an injury that might play against Cleveland. Yeah, so then that's another thing. Not Trotter, but Dean is dealing with an ankle injury. And with the releasing of Devin White, I believe the depth chart now is Cimarron, Trotter Jr., and Oren Burks behind Bond and Dean at linebacker. That's your linebacker core. Again, doesn't really put much of the fear of God into me, or probably doesn't put the fear of God into other players. And Dean, of course, who has played surprisingly well through the first 4 games. Now, here comes the injury issues again. If he goes down, then Trotter's going to have no choice but to play. But hey, you're drafted to play, right? You're not drafted to hang out on the sidelines. You're going to get an opportunity to do the best with it. I think people are going to be a little bit underwhelmed by the younger Trotter. I think he's going to go out there, and I think he's too undersized to play linebacker. I would not mind, say, putting him at safety or maybe having him blitz off the edge, but I don't know if he can play out there. I don't think he can. I don't know if he's a capable linebacker at the NFL level. If the Eagles lose to Cleveland this weekend and play without no dog in them, if I were Laurie and Howie, I would fire Sirianni and bring in Belichick. Why wait till now, though? Have you not seen enough? What? So the Cleveland Browns are your watermark, Mike? What happened to last season's collapse? What happened to the drubbing down in Tampa? Or both drubbings in Tampa. I guess you can count the playoffs too. I mean, why is the Browns the tipping point? Why haven't we not got to the tipping point? What else we keep on moving the bar for him, right? We keep on moving the bar for Sirianni. 10-1 season fell apart. Team lost the locker room. Team went on their own. They said they went on their own. No respect for them. Stripped him away of allegedly all head coaching, play calling allegedly, because apparently he's still calling plays. All head coach responsibilities by bringing in Kellen Moore to run Kellen Moore's offense, which again, he's not doing that. There's a lot of Nick Sirianni offense still being run. But how far has the bar got to be pushed for Sirianni before enough's enough? Should have been fired at the end of last season. And honestly, after that performance in Tampa, should have been fired heading into the bye. Would have been a lot easier for them to do that instead of firing him after week 6 coming out of a Cleveland Brown game. So I get what you're saying, but how far are we going to push that bar down the road for Nick Sirianni? I would have fired Sirianni after the clock ended in the playoff. Yeah, again, I agree. And that's what I'm saying. So what is the difference between what happened, the epic collapse of last season versus losing to the Cleveland Browns? I mean, what's the difference there? So they're doomed either way, if you ask me. But so the Eagles are going to head into the Week 6 matchup against the Browns in a critical game for their season, a critical game for, I think, the fans' psyche, and a critical game for everybody that has any dog in this fight for the Philadelphia Eagles. Because I don't know, is there a coming back from them losing against the Browns? I was talking to Kyle earlier, and I mentioned this game has a lot of the vibes that the Cardinal game had last year for me. Remember, that was the game that we were going to get right with? That was the game. There's no way the Cardinals are coming here and winning. There's no way Gannon's coming here with Kyler Murray and beating the Eagles on their turf. And the Cardinals came in here and just completely took out the Eagles. So this game has got a lot of those vibes going on for me. The Browns are a worse team than the Cardinals were. So I don't know last year. So I don't know, but this game has definitely got that vibe going on for me. So I think the Browns win this game. I think I said 31-24 was the final, my prediction. Nick Chubb, if he plays, will be my MVP. And there you have it. So there's my take on the Eagles. And my final point of the night, Philadelphia Flyers, finally. Hockey is back. Hockey has returned. It's already back in full force. The NHL is hosting all its opening night festivities this week. And the Flyers will return to action tomorrow night out in Western Canada, starting the 24-25 season out on a Western Canadian road trip. Take them to Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Seattle, and then back home next Saturday against the Vancouver Canucks to start the home season. Flyers will enter the season with some interesting additions. No major free agents to talk about. Externally, they didn't really bring anybody here. Matter of fact, they brought really none. But they did do a lot of internal signings. TK, 8 years. Hathaway was re-signed. Eric Johnson was re-signed. They, of course, the big story was the arrival of MattyB Michkov and what he may provide to this team, as well as the surprise addition of Jet Lachenko, the Flyers' first-round draft pick this past summer, as he made the opening night roster. And currently, right now, if you we went over this, I think, the other night on the show, but I'll refresh everyone's memories. The tentative line combinations for the Flyers starting the season is Michkov on the first line on the left. Couturier is going to be his center. TK on the right. Second line is Tippett on the left. Frost in the middle. And Forrester on the right. Third line is Farabee on the left. Lachenko in the middle. And Brink on the right. Your fourth line is Lautinen on the left. Paling in the middle. And Hathaway on the right. Lautinen getting the demotion down to the fourth line, which is interesting. York Sanheim is D1, Sealer Drysdale D2. Now Sealer's dealing with a lower body injury, not certain about his game day status. Zamula and Risto is your D3. Ursin Fedotov are your goalies, and Cates, Delorier, and Eric Johnson also round out your active roster for the Flyers to start the season. Now, a couple storylines again. Michkov is going to be the main focus on a lot of people as he starts his NHL career tomorrow night. But Lachenko, to me, is the bigger story. The Flyers have 9 games to play with him. If they decide that he's not quite ready for the NHL experience, they have 9 games to make that decision, and they can send him back to the OHL, back to the Guelph Storm, his OHL team, his major junior Canadian team. With no harm, no foul on his service time from his contract. So they'd save his first year of his ELC if they decide not to. Now, I expect in the next 9 games to see a heavy dosage of Jet Lachenko, both even strength, power play, and penalty kill. He's going to be Jet Lachenko all the time out there because they're going to want to get a complete look at what he can do over these next 9 games. Of course, now the Sam Ersson show or Sam Ersson era begins in net. No more Carter Hart. So Sam Ersson's the guy. You got Fedotov backing him up. The drama surrounding Alexei Kovaslov down there in the AHL, the maligned Russian prospect goalie that came over last year, left, went back to Belarus or went back to the KHL, said he's not playing in minor league hockey. He came here to play in the NHL. Flyers said, well, if you're not coming here, you're not playing anywhere. He comes back. Then the stances soften, and now the Flyers are saying that, you know what, we'll reevaluate this thing at the end of October, and if it's not working for him in the AHL, we'll send him back to it's drama up the butt. But the Flyers will start their season off tomorrow, and I want to debut a new segment here on the program as we will do this. We'll do this once a week. We're going to call it the prospect segment. Now, this could apply to the Flyers. It could also apply to the Phillies. But tonight it applies to the Flyers. It's our prospect segment, and our prospect of the night or our prospect of the week for the Flyers. Our first one is the center Denver Berkey of the London Knights of the OHL. 5'9", 154-pound center who was drafted in the 3rd round of the 2023 draft. Berkey is an undersized player with a lot of potential upside. Was in camp this year, dazzled, turned some heads, but let's face it, man, he's 5'9", 154 pounds. He's not ready for the NHL, and he's going to go back to Ontario or back to London with the Knights for 1 more year. Currently, he's played 1 game. They've had 1 game so far this season, and he's got an assist, and he's got a -1 rating. A plus minus of a -1 so far to start the season. He is a playmaker. He's a playmaker. He's fast. His shot is not necessarily the best part of his game, or his goal scoring attributes are not the best part of his game. But being a center, you need to have more. He's an outstanding stick handler, and he's a playmaker, good passer. Maybe an undersized version of Morgan Frost currently, but he is your prospect of the week. And again, we're going to debut a prospect of the week every week here on the Final Word with MattyB. It'll be a Flyers prospect. And as we get closer into like next winter, as we get a little bit closer to the baseball season, we'll start throwing Phillies prospects up there. And then we'll also debut the draft feature of the week. We'll highlight a potential Phillies Major League Baseball draft candidate and a Flyers draft candidate for the upcoming drafts this summer for the MLB and the NHL as we get closer to that time. So it's our prospect / draft player of the week segment here on the Final Word with MattyB. So I hope you enjoyed that. It's the first nuance to this new adventure that we're on. So looking forward to that. Real quick, a Metro Division preview. I honestly look at the Metro as an interesting division, one of the more interesting divisions in all of hockey. The Flyers, of course, were a playoff fringe team all year. They actually were the 6th seed for the majority of the season, but then they kind of fell off there at the end, pushed themselves out of playoff competition. But when I look at the Metro, I look at teams that are kind of passing each other in the night. You got the Devils, who were beset with injury last year. They went out and they acquired the goalie from Calgary, Markstrom. The Devils need a goalie and they need to stay healthy. If they can stay healthy and they got the goalie now, finally, they're going to be better. They're going to be a playoff caliber team. They fell off bad last year, but I think they're going to return to playoff prominence. The Rangers are a Stanley Cup contender, straight up. They're going to be the class of that division, of the Metro. The Penguins, they keep getting older, but they keep hanging around. Re-signed Crosby to an extension this past season. The Islanders might be one of the teams that are kind of down below in the Metro, depending on their health situation. The Carolina Hurricanes are going to challenge the Rangers all season. The Washington Capitals are just, to me, getting too old. They're keeping things together, so Ovechkin can get the record. I'm not really expecting much out of them. And the Columbus Blue Jackets, what can I say about the just terrible situation that team is in right now, dealing with the Johnny Gaudreau situation? Don't really expect much from them. And then, of course, the Flyers, who were trending up in that division all of last year. To me, it's a 2-team race in the Metro as it pertains to winning the division, and that's going to be between Carolina and the Rangers. And then you got the Devils, the Flyers, and potentially the Hurricanes. The Devils, the Flyers, and the Islanders are going to be kind of in the middle pack of that division. So, Flyers are nowhere near as good as the Rangers or the Hurricanes, but they're not as bad as some of the other teams that are trending in a different way in that division. I expect the Flyers to finish around 3rd, 4th in the Metro, and I am projecting in 2024, 2025, the playoff drought ends. The Flyers find their way into the playoffs around the 7th seed, potentially the 8th seed in the East, and really kind of give this kick at this rebuild a kick in the ass and have a playoff series for the first time. Now, they probably won't go far in the playoffs, but I do predict them to enter the NHL playoffs this year. So there you have it. Real quick. That's my Flyers and Metro projections or previews. So Johnson, Smith, yep, they're all going to be that. Yeah, Lane Johnson, AJ, and Devontae have all been cleared. They've been full participants in practice all week. They will play on Sunday against the Browns. So that's going to aid the Eagles in their in their attempt to beat the Browns. So, but there you have my Flyers prediction. They will return to the playoffs. That's right. You heard it here first. You heard it here on the Final Word, MattyB. The Flyers will be back in the playoffs next season. Folks, it's going to wrap me up. It's been a great first week on the show. We finished our first broadcasting week. We will be back on Sunday night to wrap up the Eagles game, talk about what went down over the weekend, and get you ready for the start of your Philadelphia sports week. But we will be back tomorrow night and Saturday night for the Clear the Ice show, the Flyers post-game show, immediately following the Flyers Vancouver tomorrow and the Flyers in Calgary on Saturday night. So make sure you're stay tuned for that. And please, again, like and subscribe the YouTube channel, because I don't know how much longer I can stay on the EOP social media sites. And thanks for a great first week, everybody. Talked about this a little bit, about this new journey and all the circumstances around it. No more time to lament, no more time to reminisce. It's time to move forward, and that's what we've done here on the program. It's been a great first week. I appreciate all the help, all the contributions. We will talk to you again next week on this program, and we will talk to you tomorrow on the Clear the Ice program, immediately following the Flyers. You guys enjoy the rest of your night and have a great tomorrow.